Susan, what would I do without you? I'm going to call you my sound girl. My sound gal. All right. So tonight we're going to be looking at Fredrick Cuming. And there's a lot of similarities between him and the artist from last night. And at the same time, quite different. I think they're masters at the aesthetic balance. So let's just jump and share the screen and see how that goes. I was able to update since Sketch Club, but the camera still seems to be freezing a bit on me. So let's hope we can get through tonight and we'll figure out what's happening. All right, let me get to where I need to be real quick. So I was trying to think, and I think I may have shared him during a patron program a little while ago. Give me just a second here. For some reason that's not quite acting right. See if we can get you guys back on a good picture. Okay. Well, I guess this I'll just have to do from now. This should be centered, but it's not, which is fine. Yeah, mine is very cropped for some. Here we go. There we go. Now we see it. But notice how his people, like last night's, how abstract they are. And then like the clouds, what abstract shapes and what big roles the abstract shapes play. So here, let's look at it a couple of shapes at a time. So the people on the beach, those are just basically dark notes, aren't they? So how do they fade off into the distance? And how do the notes of the people change from the notes of the clouds? Right? Can you see how each note is very different personality? And then what about the distant hills? The distant shore? And compare that to the glare on the water. So can you take this in as kind of visual sound? Right, there's a great line that in a song that I just thought so apt. And it said all these doctors and all these psychics, they have them all right. They're all right and they're all wrong. They're trying to sing along with they're trying to sing every word when they should simply hum along. And I don't know, when I heard that line by a band named Dawes, it just really struck it a lot in painting. Because so much of painting is suggestion. But so many of us feel the need to really articulate and enunciate and pronounce, when it should really we should just hum along with the song. And somehow that humming and the lack of enunciation, the lack of clarity, right? The abundance of just suggestion, right, is sometimes a little more fun to look at. Susan, are you laughing at my offer to be my sound my sound lady, my sound engineer? Oh, I need one. I need one. Hey, we haven't done too bad. We haven't done too bad. Introvert streaming. Is this the third or fourth week? I think we're doing pretty good. Is it easier to see those notes in black and white? And then again, let's disorient ourselves for a minute. I mean, it's just kind of hard to put words on it, but yeah, just visual poetry, visual music. So I'll be interested to hear what you guys think between last night and tonight. And even if you don't dig this style of art, I think there's a lot to be learned from it. A lot to be learned from it. Right? One of the things we talked about today in the morning show was the variety of shapes. And how shapes can be active and come and go. And so in that sense, look at the shapes of those clouds. At first glance, oh yeah, that's easy. But that's some really fine work and some aesthetic balance, in my opinion. In my opinion, it's just so marvelous. A master. A master. And as far as I know, he's still around. 90 years old, 1930. So that's interesting. So I almost get the feeling of looking through three-dimensional. Yeah, and that's the kind of thing as they're kind of two-dimensional shapes. He hasn't really refined a lot. And so, yeah, in a sense, they kind of float there in space. Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. That's interesting. I clearly see that now, but I don't think I didn't quite have that feeling. Yeah. There was a Russian artist we'll have to look at sometime that I just loved, and I'd look at Nikolai Timkov. And he was very kind of design-oriented and seemingly flat, but there was a three-dimensionality to him. And just brilliant. Very colorful. Very, very colorful. Again, feel those notes. Right? Like, feel the nature of this dark. And then look at the nature of this dark. And these little darks build up until... Right? So just think about the nature of the dark notes. Clouds, distant hills, beach. Yeah, it mesmerizes. It just mesmerizes. I like when I'm doing this with you guys, I constantly have to remind myself to talk. I think primarily I'm nonverbal anyway, and it just stills my speech. It stills my speech. So this is, right, so it's like the same, and he does other things, but the same few elements in there, but just aesthetically rearranged. Right, so just that game, that balance game. And like we saw with the creek bed this morning, it's so much more than it first appears. So much more than it first appears. And so this time, let's compare, instead of the dark notes, look at the light notes. Right? Look at the nature of this light versus that right? You know, so I never really know what people see, and after being an artist so long, I'm quite aware that I see differently, or they see differently, or focus on different things. But there's something about, and I don't know, I haven't read a lot about his philosophy or even anything about his thought or anything. I've simply just looked at his paintings. But Lefel talks about abstract realism. And to me, this would fall in that realm of it really rides the line between abstraction and realism, or, making things look like things. And to me, that was always such a fun place to be. Such a fun place to be. Oh, I can zoom in on this one. Like, look how he's just added that little bit more around the edge of the cloud, but yet he didn't do a hard straight line. He was able to keep it that organic kind of feeling. Right? And soft edges and hard edges, even without any hard, definite edges. Because it's all relative. It's all real. To me, this little sequence here is just like pure genius. It's just wow. And the subtle coloration between the warms and the cools and those clouds just really bring them to life. Do you see how much more is going on here than here? And how much more is going on here than... Right? It's subtle. It's quiet, but it's definite. So beautiful. So, with even in these shapes, I hope you guys are seeing that the edge you choose to make, and then because we've seen that you can take it right to the edge to hide, but we can also take it into the center to get them off the edge, and he does that in some of his other paintings. So in a way, you can almost see this as a single dark note. Right, look how this all ties together. Right, it all ties, and look, it ties together there, ties together, ties together, ties together, ties. And at the very edges, look, this dark note starts to kind of fall apart just a little bit. Again, for my money, it's just the most beautiful poetry. It's just the most beautiful poetry. I mean, I can almost see it as like smoke from a fire. But guys, it ain't easy leaving this much of the canvas completely blank. Right? With just a little texture. And still have such an outstanding, right? We talk about passive versus active. You could talk about busy versus quiet. That's so well said. So well said. It's so complex in its simplicity. That is such an apt description. Right? Just take it down to the simplest. But not not barren, right? The simplicity isn't barren. To me, it's still very, very rich. And then something just a little bit different from him. Right? He does different things, but just to shake things up here a little bit. Right? So you can do it with more color, less color, monochromatic, pinks and greens here. Is that a red, green, blue going on? I don't know. Look at this. Look at this transition. Oh my God, that's so gorgeous. Did you guys notice that the land here doesn't exist on the sides? No, you didn't notice it. Very wintry feeling. Very, very wintry feeling. And again, so the nature of those dark notes versus the clouds and the beach, right? It's still a rhythm. It's still a balance. It's still a pattern. But the nature of the dark shapes. To me, the idea and the nomenclature of a note, a dark note, rather than a shape. To me, a note is easier to kind of let waft away into the air with an open edge. Whereas for a lot of people, when they hear shape, I know when I started, I thought shape, I thought definite edge, definite edge, definite edge. Well, the best shapes have a variety of edges. And some of them are just wide open. Wide open. So this will be the last full painting we see of him. And then I do have a couple of pictures of him that I'd like to share. But again, so complex in its simplicity, right? And not only that this everything about it is rich, right? And by keeping the detail out, it I don't even know what I'm trying to say. The story's rich, but you're not caught up in description. You're more caught up into the mood of the story. The last one, I mean. Let's see. So Susan says it's lighter, richer in the foreground. The last one, I mean. Let's take a look. Yeah, it's close, but I think here what's happening, it's tricky, right? Because what he's got here is actually, this is do you see this is shadow? And this is light? And he's done something very, very tricky here, right? His shadow and his light are reversed. Do you see that? The shadow in the foreground is lighter than the sun in the background. And so when you get at a certain level, you play all kinds of games with these rules, and you kind of see what you can get away with. And when we see it, we love it. Right? You know, if it works. If it works. So, that's my 2 cents. That's what I see, right? isn't it interesting? Look, did you notice that this part's in shadow and then that's getting light? And by the way, anytime we're dealing with photographs and everything, the colors can be slightly off. I'm not familiar enough with his work to know whether that's the case here or not. But yeah, it's fun to look. By the way, did we compare the sky? But again, this is a little different, and why? Because we're talking with snow, right? So snow is, for one thing, it's quote unquote white, so it's super light, versus kind of a colorful or a rich that we're used to working with. But yeah, his sky is darker than his foreground. So fun. Thanks for noticing that. Can you see these little dark notes right here? And look how they dissipate, kind of, almost like a cloud floating away. And again, how much nothing does he have right here? How much? And isn't this fantastic on the beach? Can we get any closer to this? A little bit, not much. It's hard for me to imagine that there's anybody on the planet that could look at that and go, ooh, I want to do that. Because that looks like that was a lot of fun to do. Right? And the other thing is, it looks like he just threw it out there. Right? It looks very casual and natural. I assure you it probably did not happen that way. Oh, sweetie, I'm so glad you were able to see this. Isn't this fantastic? Fantastic. Let's see what else we got here. Right, so notice how he's using these values to control form. So the light surrounded by the dark, right? Kind of a focused constant versus the dissipated light. And this is fantastic. Look, he's got light dissipating in two totally different natures here. I mean, if you would have told me when I was a young man that I was going to be sitting here like getting all excited about light dissipating in two different ways, I would have said you're nuts. But the way that he's handled that paint is just, again, so beautiful, so poetic, so magical. It stirs something inside me. Right? Awakens us. All right, so let's poke our head out of here and say, okay, let's see. We already have that. I wanted to share just a couple of photos of him. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this is I don't know that it's advertised enough, or maybe I just don't see it. There's plenty of people, and that are going strong. Their entire life. Look at that. Look at that. I wish I could see them in person. Yeah, me too. Me too. And then, I'm sure this man is very lovely. I'm sure he's a great, or I don't know whether he is or not, to be honest with you, but I have a hard time even looking at him because I'm looking at what he's got going on behind him. You got to be kidding. Look how fantastic that is. Just fantastically abstract. All right, and let's end with this one too. I just think this is just fantastic. Him just sitting on a bench. Right? Can you think? I mean, how many times have you walked past this guy? Right? How many people have we just strolled right past and they were sitting there and doing something just magical that we were completely unaware of? I don't know about you, but that kind of lights my heart up. You know, it's nice to read about heroes and this and that. But you know what's even nicer? Is just how incredible people are. And how incredible people are that we're not even aware of. Right? People are awesome. Right? People can be awesome at everything. And that includes simply making patterns on a two-dimensional surface. Right? How can some light, dark marks on a two-dimensional surface elevate our soul, raise our spirits, right? Delight our eyes. So I want to ask you, what can you do with your patterns? What can we do with our work, with our own work, to make it more visually delightful? Right? You may not don't throw out everything you're doing, but how can you add a little bit more? Right? And I'm not talking detail, but I'm talking light, dark pattern enhancement. How can your shapes get better? How can your variety get better? Right? And when I see him and I see his work, I'm inspired to try it. Because he shows me how much is possible. How much is possible. So, I've done nothing but ever see pictures of this man. I don't think I've read a word about him other than his name and the date he was born. Yet he has deeply, deeply touched me just through his visual work here. And I think that's the best that art can do. Right? That's one of the best things it can do, and it's a lot, and it's powerful. And so, strive to get that in your work, right? Strive to not let it be okay, but strive to let it touch somebody. Right? See if you can't make a full-grown man cry. I double dog dare ya. Right? I hope you can make me cry. All right, guys. That's it for tonight's masterwork. I'll be back at 8 a.m. in the morning for some morning jump start, some student feedback. I really appreciate you guys being here. We will have Masterworks tomorrow night, and that will be it for this week. But then we'll be returning Monday. And just a reminder, afternoon show was canceled this week, so we can get our lights set up and our cameras moved around. I hope to show you that progress next week. So I do have frozen cameras, so there'll be no wave from me. But no, I'm smiling at you. And hoping you guys get a beautiful night's sleep. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for being here.